You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
You ever get a song stuck in your head, and for the life of you, you cannot figure out how that happened? Where did you even hear it? Why did this pop into your head? Was there something that you heard about? Did you read about something that reminded you of some part of the song? You rack your brain trying to figure out how this insidious tune has made it into your head. What did it that mentally flagged it and brought it to the very, very front of your brain? Because right now I'm suffering from a very strong bout of that. And unfortunately, it involves the band Semisonic. So I have an announcement for all of you, more of a PSA, if you will, just so you're aware in case you've lost track of the time. Closing time. Come on, you've definitely had a song stuck in your head. Open all your doors up and let you out into the world. Duh. Man, what a catchy tune. Closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Also, why did everyone sound tone deaf as shit when they made music back then like that, ladies and gentlemen? Wonderwall. I don't know, it's a good question. But anyway, I don't know who broke into my home. I don't know who broke into my home. Broke into my home. My nose is congested, dude. I don't know how I got that song stuck in my head. Maybe it was just something about the melody. Maybe I was reading something that just reminded me about the song. Or maybe I have the song completely wrong. Maybe what I just did is present maybe the case for the year's strongest, catchiest bits of musical experience that your ears can find themselves having. I don't know who broke into my home, broke into my home. Oh, man. Well, we're trying to figure out who broke into the home of Paul Pelosi. Because Paul Pelosi, husband of Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, the private citizen who is statistically by the data, and data has a very specific definition, and that's going to be the theme of this episode, data. Not data, by the way. No one says data. We need to exclude the data versus data debate. That is not one of the two words pronounced separately. Do you know anyone who says data? You don't know anyone who says data. That's not a thing. If anything, it sounds like data's bitches best be wearing jimmies or some shit like that. That sounds like a name, a proper noun of a pimp in South Florida or something like that. It's data. And data is I think, in danger of having the definition completely stripped of it and people not understanding why it's important and what the definition of data actually is. So I will read it for you up top. The definition of data is as follows. Factual information, such as measurements or statistics, used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or calculation. Okay? Data. Data could be numbers. Data could be words, data could be anything, but data is essentially the numerical, statistical representation of truth. And not this new agey type of truth, not this modern day truth where it's like King Henry VIII truth, where you're like, actually, no, we're going to rearrange everything because it's how I see it. That would be called enabling a literal schizophrenic person. If a close friend of yours says, hey, I can't come hang out tonight, I am surrounded by a moat of pudding. I would think if you are a good friend, you wouldn't say, well, yeah, I get that. I sure wouldn't want to have to traverse a giant moat of pudding myself. Because you would be a piece of shit friend enabling obviously self-destructive behavior that benefits nobody and is also, by the way, not fucking true. Or maybe, I don't know, there might be a mode of pudding somewhere. Probably at your mom's house. Anyway, your mom loves pudding, that fat bitch. She a portly woman. But let's talk about Paul Pelosi. Because Paul Pelosi is trying to get to the bottom of, just like everyone else who has heard about this story, just who broke into his home, because the story is a little weird, if I do say so myself. And granted, every story I have ever talked about is one that I found a little weird. But this one I find particularly weird. And let's begin. So, Paul Pelosi, who, let's just get this out of the gate up top. If you don't know who he is, I want to be very, very, very fucking clear about this. Paul Pelosi is Nancy Pelosi's husband. They have been the couple that is a staple, a fixture of the scene of San Francisco for 30 years. Now, before we go any further into the Paul Pelosi story and tread into some area, into some water that may sound conspiratorial, that is not what I will be doing. And I will be making a very careful, measured approach to make sure I'm not doing that here, because I want to be very clear. I am not at all, in any way, even remotely sympathetic to anyone who proudly identifies themselves as someone who's not even completely dismissive to QAnon bullshit. If you're not literally, if you're someone who's like, I'm not saying I'm all into it, but like, Jim Caviezel. Hey, there was a time in my life when I got it. Jim Caviezel, sure. But shit has gotten serious, and you Q-tards are really a problem, okay? You don't even realize how much of a problem you actually are, which in a weird way should actually give you some self-esteem, which I would think then in theory would prevent you from doing all of this stupid shit, like dressing like you're Scandinavian despite being from a subtropical climate in fucking Florida, to take a Greyhound to Washington, D.C., to on a lark overthrow the government and maybe in theory start a new one. Anyone who is even remotely sympathetic to QAnon beliefs at all, I am no friend of, and they can go fuck themselves as soon as their mother has been dealt with. And by that, I mean she'll actually deal with me. We like to get freaky. I don't even know what the safe word is this week. Point of what I'm saying is before I go any further talking about the Paul Pelosi story, Paul Pelosi has dodged gay rumors for the better part of 30 years. No one's really given a shit because he's in San Francisco. Maybe the gayest place on earth besides Disneyland, not Disney World. That's for families. San Francisco, nobody gives a shit if you're gay. In fact, that's actually blasé. They call it blagay. Like, how boring of you to just simply be gay. How have you not changed your gender 13 times today, narrowly avoided stepping on human shit, and jerked off proudly and freely while waiting for the free bus stop? Don't you love the city? Gay is boring at this point in San Francisco. So, I say all of that to say, anyone who has found themselves digging into the story and being susceptible, and granted, a lot of this falls on, the guy named Trump, who used to be president with fake hair and is responsible for a potential insurrection. A lot of the guilt and blame falls on him for pushing this reckless idea up top. But I will separate myself before it sounds like I do the exact same thing. But to be honest and to be serious, I don't give a shit if Paul Pelosi's gay. And I'm not going to insinuate any of that at all. My main concern with this story is the fact that the woman, whether you like her or not, and I certainly don't, she's actually a fucking idiot who really legitimately should have already started a war with China. Thank God somehow that hasn't happened. Regardless of how I feel about her, she is literally the second in line to the presidency. At any moment, if America has a bad day, she's president that night. Think about that for a second. Yes, she sucks. Yes, her job pays her $200,000 a year, and she has a net worth upwards of hundreds of millions. Yes, her husband, Paul, the fuduk, the schmutz, the schmuck, the dumb fuck, who also, and this is just by the data, statistically, fun fact for you, Paul Pelosi statistically has a better record in the stock market as a private citizen than Warren Buffett in a much shorter amount of time. None of that has anything to do with the fact that there may have been copious, and I mean literally maybe the only thing this couple talks about, because what else would they relate about, what else would this couple talk about besides insider trading? Things like that. Like, what company's selling iodine that might be useful in case I decide I have to go over to fucking Taiwan and start another war, maybe. So I say all of this to say up top, anyone who has fallen for any of this gay-bashing baiting thing that's going on with the narrative involving David DePepe or DePap or whoever the fuck you say his name, I'm sure he doesn't even know because it just got assigned. Whatever I am to break down and discuss following this self-righteous indignation of me trying to cement myself as a good person, I don't know if it's working, but I do mean it regardless, so fuck off if it's not. But anyway, I feel like I have to say it. I don't care if he's gay. I don't care if Paul Pelosi is only capable of achieving orgasm if several midgets and a gypsy and a balloon is involved. It has nothing to do with me at all. I am worried about it seemed very easy for a crazy person, a nudist who spent time in Berkeley and looked like someone who probably should have done UFC and sprinted to middle school every step of the way in a winter coat and shorts. I'm talking a real screw-loose looking motherfucker. I'm worried that guy was able to knock on a door of the woman who could become president if a bad day happens. And the guy who lives there, the schmuck who, coincidentally happens to be the greatest stock investor of all time, lets an intruder into his house. Guy knocked on the door and came on in. Paul let him in. Now, the very, very first bit of contention is how David DePepe, DePussy, definitely not DePussy. See, I said I wasn't even going to do that, but, comedy. I guess that was my Mark Normand. But anyway, the first bit of contention was literally how did David get in the house? Now, you would think this would be a matter that could be resolved post-haste, toot sweet, motherfucker, because A, Secret Service, because lady has the nuclear suitcase and could be president if anything goes wrong at an airport again. Now, you would think the Secret Service or Capitol Police, who are posted there at all times to watch the house of the person who might be president, you would think maybe they would notice the guy who just looked mad strange. I'm talking the kid from middle school that freaked everyone out the most, and now you spend maybe once every month wondering what in the fuck would happen to that person. That kid who wore camouflage jackets and shorts year-round was just approaching the house of the woman who might be president. And the Secret Service / Capitol Police who were there posted up missed it, I guess. Now, that doesn't seem likely, right? That doesn't seem like, boy, they must really suck at their jobs. And I have a feeling, I have a strong inclination that the people willing to take a bullet for the president, or really whoever they're protecting, are that shitty at their jobs, right? I mean, service has taken a nosedive as of late, and a lot of podcasts suck, especially Tim Dillon's lately, but for the most part, what I'm saying is that seems unlikely the Secret Service would have missed that big of a hulking dumb fuck approaching when what clearly looks to be an intimidating stature, frame, appearance, clothing, and backpack full of hammers and zip ties. I don't think they would have missed that guy, which then leads you to the next logical conclusion. If we are to just follow the data, if we are to just follow a line of thoughts based solely on what we know to be true, there will be no conjecture here as I break down this story. We are only going to talk about what we know to be true and what are the implications of that then. Because a lot of this can be thought of very logically. A lot of this, because, that's how crime scenes work and shit. I don't even want to be a cop, and I feel like I'm the greatest detective who's ever fucking lived. All right, I might want to walk that one back. There is Sherlock Holmes, who was a boxer, not real, and written by a guy who literally thought he talked to fairies. So actually, you know what? I'm the greatest detective mind who's ever lived. If you are looking at a crime scene and you are trying to figure out what the true story is, because both sides have, strong motives to lie or at least embellish or kind of misremember in a very generous sense exactly what happened. So when breaking down inconsistencies in what is literally a crime here, you have to do it logically. Without any bias, you can't make any conspiracies, you can't jump to any conclusions. You specifically can't get yourself swept up in scandalous Q-tard thinking that is propagated by people like Kanye West and Donald Trump. What a world we live in. It's not even relevant. Don't like even find yourself kind of amused on Reddit or on any other fucking whatever you read to get weird news or information from. I know y'all have a spot. Don't find yourself like, man, both men were found in their underwear. That wasn't true. How would that actually even be proven true? And also, if that was true, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? I could give a shit. They could have both been doused thoroughly in Hershey's milk chocolate playing Twister with the movie Twister on in the background, featuring, of course, Bill Paxton. And that doesn't fucking concern me at all. What concerns me is how was the man able to come inside the home unnoticed by Secret Service or the Capitol Police to get naked, douse himself in chocolate, and then play Twister while watching Twister. That is the problem. You can't do that in the house of the person who might have to be president. Why did that happen? So, what you have to logically ask yourself is probably the Secret Service didn't miss the big hulking dumb fuck approaching with a backpack full of weapons, maybe. What more likely is the case is that logically there wasn't a reaction because either A, whoever was inside the home was expecting this person, David, to pull up to the house that night, or the Secret Service was familiar with this person and they knew not to expect an issue because nothing looked out of the ordinary. Now that brings me to my first legitimate inconsistency that is true and tangible in the world you can touch and say, hey, that doesn't add up. The actual police report, which has been compiled by some of San Francisco's dumbest, I would imagine, I support cops fully. It's a very difficult job. I don't support the ones who are stupid or murderers, but, I tend to think there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for problems. Call me crazy. But by and large, I'm not one of these people in Minnesota who wants to just control the streets with pitchforks. I tend to think we kind of need police. Stop being ridiculous. That being said, the San Francisco police do appear, unfortunately, to be some of the dumbest people I have unfortunately ever had the mispleasure of reading about or being aware of as people. Because the first inconsistency that is already a failure in the chain of command of the procedure involving a crime scene, the police report specifically says that David entered the home via breaking in a window, climbing through the window into Paul Pelosi's bedroom, right? That's what this police report says from the San Francisco Police Department. Now, there is also evidence, visual, tangible evidence, none of it a conspiracy. Don't even start to leap to the next point yet. Hear what I'm going to say, and that is it. There are evidence, crime scene photos of said window that we were told David broke into at the house of Paul Pelosi being smashed, but all of the broken glass was on the outside of the window. There are pictures of this. This is true. This is not a conspiracy. This is real. When you hear Donald Trump or whoever is dumb enough to parrot what he's saying each and every day, whenever you hear him now talking about Paul Pelosi and the hammer and the broken glass, and boy, I don't want to know what's going on in that house. Sure, he might be right, he might not be, but I guarantee you what he's hinting at and what he's doing is the shit all for the wrong reasons. You're literally just leaning into what is scandalous. You just want to make another Andrew Gillum or Ed Buck, which, we shouldn't have. Andrew Gillum, maybe less so. Ed Buck was literally murdering people. I don't know. We don't want either. But the larger point is Trump doing what he's doing here is just more of the fucking eggy, antagonistic. It's not even what's fucking important. Why can't you get your stupid head around that? That was your fucking problem all along, was you failed to see what was actually important. You get hung up on the dumb shit, the inconsequential shit, which is a hallmark characteristic of being a fucking child or nincompoop. And Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and any other Republican person of any notoriety at all who pushes this story or retweets it with the emojis and the this and the that, what you're doing is truly and literally the dumbest way to react to a level of national security. Gives a fuck if they were in their underwear. I cannot stress this enough. I don't care if Paul and David were making Bob Crane-style home movies, only they both were dressed as Nazis. I don't give a shit what they were doing. I give a shit why the one guy was there, how he got in, How no one noticed, whose job it is to notice. I don't give a shit about the gay thing. Who cares? He might be gay. He might not be gay. I have news for you. You're gay. Your mom's not gay. She's straight as shit because you get the joke at this point. I don't even really want to make jokes about it anymore. I just have a nice, serious, meaningful connection with another person who happens to be your mom. I probably shouldn't even. It's probably if anything, it's probably just me covering my fear of commitment to your mom because she's a wonderful. Let me get back on track to the larger point at hand. The inconsistencies being pointed out are worth asking. You should ask them, and you are owed answers. I would think we're talking about the safety and security of someone with nuclear launch codes. Granted, thankfully, Nancy wasn't there, but that information, of course, did nothing to dissuade David, who apparently, upon having this information shared with him from Paul, which again, let me ask you just logically, place yourself in Paul's shoes. You get a knock on the door or a smash through the window, maybe, who knows, from a guy who looks literally like one of the scariest white people you'll ever come across. And I don't mean scary white people in the sense of like, wow, this guy's 300 pounds and is like a bouncer at some bar that is probably a little racist. Not that type of intimidating. I'm talking like the crazy, dead in his eyes, probably MK Ultra, because he literally was in a nudist colony at fucking Berkeley. That sounds very conservative to me. That type of crazy. That type of crazy knocks on your door at on a Friday, October 28th, on a Friday at 2:30 a.m., which is, of course, a half hour after Semisonic, which is obviously 2 a.m., which is closing time for bars. So about half past a Semisonic, a man who literally looks like a school shooter only on steroids with a ponytail knocks on your door or breaks through your window and asks where your wife, the second person in line to the presidency, is. Now, Paul offers up the information. She's not here, and she won't be back for several days. David responds to this information, again, this is according to the police report, by saying, that's okay, I'll wait. And Paul says, sure, would you like a Pop-Tart? Well, the Pop-Tart thing I added, but up until now, this is actually what the story is. Does this make any sense to you? Someone who's scary as shit knocks on your door or breaks in and says, where's your wife? You tell her, or him, sorry, excuse me, I don't know. Guy went to Berkeley. I might have gotten it right. Who knows for all you fucking know? Anyway, would you tell him where your wife is? The guy who is asking about her with a backpack full of zip ties and hammers? I don't think you would. And you certainly wouldn't say, well, if she's not here, I don't want you to miss her. Just wait. It's not going to be several days until she's back, so I guess I'm asking you to move into my house with a backpack full of zip ties and hammers, and you're someone who I allegedly don't know. Now, the first inconsistency we can't get past is how David even got in the fucking house. Because also, obviously, since there's Social Security, since there's Secret Service and the Capitol Police posted outside, there are cameras. Now, thankfully, cameras exist. Now, I don't know if you know this, to record things. Cameras exist to record things that happened in the past. That is a camera. Cameras do not tell you what happened in the future, because that wouldn't be a camera anymore. That would be a chronovisor, and that machine exists. Look into it. Seriously, I'm not fucking kidding. Anyway, so cameras exist to record things that have already happened. That's why we have them in very high security places where we need to make sure nothing unpredictable can happen. We literally can't afford something unpredictable to happen because this needs to go according to plan or we have fucking problems. Case in point, Jeffrey Epstein in potentially one of the most heavily guarded prisons in America that we know of, the public. You know, there's way worse ones in like Manila or probably Dallas, Texas, for all I fucking know. But one of the most secured prisons, Jeffrey Epstein, was on surveillance and suicide watch, but he was under 24-hour surveillance from some of the most technologically advanced cameras currently in the world. Now, unfortunately, we missed the whole time Jeffrey was able to get out of our sight and kill himself. Thankfully, we would have the cameras, right? That would catch at least what happened. No, we forgot to turn them on. Shit. Well, at least those two guards got paid off, and we'll never hear from them ever again. If you can believe it. if you can strap yourself in and get ready for a boy, I didn't see that coming. Boy, I didn't see that coming. All of the cameras pointed at the Pelosi house were turned off inadvertently. How the fuck did that happen? Boy, by golly, these cameras don't seem to be doing camera stuff lately for the people who need them to be doing that. So, the next point that I have, what we know to be factually true, don't do any conspiracy. The cameras that were watching the home were turned off. We know that to be true. We don't know why, but we know they were turned off, and we know they're not supposed to be turned off, which means either something failed or they were turned off. Now, something could fail, but again, shit doesn't usually break, especially when purchased by the fucking government to do its job correctly. So, kind of leans towards it was turned off, but that's conjecture. I can't prove that. So I'm not going to go down that route because that's how serious I'm taking this shit. I am a performance journalist and a Mormon antagonist. So, we don't know how Paul and David originally came to have their original fisticuffs in the home, but what we do know is after there was a broken window, which seemed to support the story that the guy David broke in through the window. However, screeching brakes, screeching halt, there are visual photographs. Visual photographs. That was maybe one of the dumbest things I've ever said, and I bet most of you didn't even catch it. That's how sad that is. But there are photographs proving this window that was smashed. All of the glass fell on the outside of the house. That's not how things fall. Remember when I talked about, you notice more things in the sky lately? If you do, it's because you realize when you look up and you see something in the sky, it's not supposed to be there because that just doesn't look right. That doesn't feel right. Just like when you break glass on the outside of a house, you're punching in. The glass would then go in to the house. Unless you had a suction cup to shatter and pull out, which is the move I have coined when I am, finishing coitus with your mama, shatter and pull out, you probably didn't have that type of advanced tool to shatter glass and leave everyone at the crime scene confused. What's more likely is that the window was broken, dun dun dun, from the inside of the house. Because, we know how gravity works and we know how things fall. You can only look at what you know. When you break a window, the glass goes in the direction that you are punching. Now, if the glass is on the outside of the house, that stands to reason the window was punched from the inside of the house. Now, next question. If the window was punched from the inside of the house, who punched it and why? Would Paul punch his own window inside of his house to try and escape? Potentially, sure. But if that's the reason the glass is smashed and the glass is on the outside of the house because Paul was hypothetically trying to escape from David, who was inside of his house trying to cause harm to him, then you must ask yourself, wait a minute, how did David get in the house? Because in the police report, it says he broke in through a window, but the only window with broken glass is the one with the glass outside the house, which implies it was broken from inside the house, which begs the question, numbnuts, who broke the window and why? One possible explanation is Paul broke the window inside of his own house in an attempt to escape, to get out of his house, because David was inside of his house and potentially trying to cause harm to him. That's very plausible. That's very believable. However, how quickly we forget, how would David have gotten inside of the house in the first place then? In the hypothetical situation where Paul smashes the window, explaining why the glass is on the outside of the house, because he was trying to escape from David, that doesn't jive with the police report, which says David entered the house through breaking a window. There was only one broken window and the glass was in the wrong fucking place. That is a fact. Now, another interesting bit of information in this police report is that once Paul let this guy in that he did not know and explained his wife's travel schedule to him and prepared to just, hang out and make him tea at 2:30, nearly 3 at this point on a Friday night, much to Paul's chagrin, things went a bit south when the crazy giant hulking dumb fuck with a backpack full of weapons decided to be himself and be a crazy dumb fuck with a backpack full of weapons and trying to attack him. Now, what's interesting is in the scuffle, in Paul trying to get away, I imagine there's like a Benny Hill situation going on inside the house. Something like something like that. That's what I'm thinking in my head to keep it funny, because I can't even explain to you how my head works. It is completely tonally imbalanced. However, at some point during the dance around the kitchen island that naturally happens in any chase, Paul was able to luckily make it into the bathroom of his house, where he, like anyone else, like any tax-paying, God-fearing, red-blooded American, keeps their cell phone to charge. The bathroom. The room with most of the water, all of the running water, and all of the moisture. That's where he kept his phone to charge. Doesn't everyone? So, anyway, apart from that weird bit of detail, honestly, the weirdest part of the whole story, am I right? I'm definitely not. Apart from that weird detail, Paul gets into the bathroom, closes the door, and calls 911. Now, Paul calls 911, and this is another true, tangible thing. There's no conspiracy here. There is just what is. And I will tell you what happened. The 911 dispatcher, speaking to Paul, had a conversation with Paul in which Paul, in a very coded, hidden type of language, was trying to express panic. However, he's trying to sound cool, play it cool. Which, again, to be very fair, I completely understand. If you think you might die because someone who looks like Shrek, only like a human, and again, looks like a school shooter pulled up with a backpack full of zip ties and a hammer, baby, looking for your wife, and you were dumb enough for some reason, despite being the most successful stockbroker of all time, to explain where your wife is and when she'll be back and welcome this murderer into your house, after you've realized the error in your ways from that, you find yourself held up in a bathroom trying to call 911, but also not freak the guy out, because again, he looks like what we just said. I get all that. So, when Paul says to the 911 dispatcher, there's a man in my house, he's waiting for my wife, I don't know the man, he's a friend, his name's David, but I've never seen him before. These are quotes from Paul to the 911 dispatcher. I've never seen him before. He's a friend. His name's David. I don't know about you. I am a little psychic, but not really. I haven't harnessed it or anything. I don't have a cape or a hat. Well, not a cool hat. I do have Merlin with Mel Gibson on VHS sucking my dick. But I'm not necessarily psychic. But I would imagine I'm like most people, where when I see someone and meet someone that I do not know for the first time, I don't already know their name and consider them a dear friend. That's just not how I like to move in relationships. I'm not that fast. I'm not your mom. Boy, your mom's on fire tonight. She should call a doctor and get that looked at. Whew. Blow out the pistol. Okay. Anyway, so I don't know the names of people I haven't met, and I don't consider them close friends, especially when they're trying to kill me and I'm calling 911 because of them while held up in my own bathroom. Now, to give Paul the benefit of the doubt, and to tell Trump to just shut the fuck up and worry about what is actually important, not whether or not the two men knew each other or not, because truly, consider this. If you're fearing for your life, and you're trying to keep someone who you know is on the edge, just on the right side of the edge, you would say things to not induce panic, to de-escalate. You would say things, particularly if you think you're being heard, like, there's someone in my house waiting for my wife. It's my friend, David. He's a stranger. I've never met him before, but he's my friend. You would say my friend, or it's Dave. You would use his name for identifying, if you think David's listening to you, if you think he's Jack Nicholson with the axe on the other side of the bathroom door, listening, if you're Paul, you would say, my friend David. You would use language that de-escalates, because you don't want him to go full-blown crazy. I totally get that, and that's very plausible. However, that is only the case if you believe, and again, if you're Paul in this instance, if you believe that David is listening to you on the other side of the door. Because in the police report, Paul made the 911 phone call while David was in another room. Paul completed the phone call and then met up with David again. At this point, police were dispatched and arrived to the scene, burst in the door that originally let David in, or the window. We're still not sure about that one. Cops burst in the front door, only to find David and Paul now wrestling on the first floor of the house. They since walked downstairs again from the second floor. And now there's two hammers. I'm not making this shit up. Now there's suddenly two hammers. In the actual police report, it went from David had a backpack full of zip ties and a hammer to the police finally showed up after Paul made a 911 call explaining there was a stranger that he didn't know, but he did and knew his name, waiting to come abduct his wife, even though he let him in through the front door, even though the police report says a window, but that doesn't logically even seem possible. Despite all of that, the biggest plot twist is finally San Francisco's finest and dumbest bursts in the door, ready to save the day. Lo and behold, now there's suddenly two hammers, and they're having a duel with hammers. This is not a euphemism. Don't you even fucking try and make it a gay joke. All of a sudden, there's two hammers now. Literally, like they're like sword fighting with hammers. Where did it come from? We don't know. Did David bring two? Potentially. It seems really fucking dumb. If you're bringing a hammer to use as a weapon, I wouldn't bring another literally equally as powerful weapon, an identical weapon, that might accidentally get picked up by your fucking enemy while you're trying to use it. I wouldn't do that, but that's just me. Now, did Paul have his own hammer just waiting? I mean, maybe Paul is handy with the steel, if you know what I mean, to earn his keep. I mean, he is the most successful stockbroker of all time, based on the data. Based on the data of this story entirely. Based on what is true and what we can then deduce to logically arrive at a conclusion, I have no fucking idea what happened. And you don't either. All you have is evidence. All you have are inconsistencies within that evidence. Any conclusions you derive from said inconsistencies is a conspiracy. It is conjecture. And unless you're someone who's really trained and mentally capable and AKA not a nincompoop, I don't think you should have the right to just fucking talk willy-nilly about it. I get Trump hinting and beating around the bush about all the scandalous Ed Buck, Andrew Gillum elements of this story. But again, first of all, you're the president. Act with a little bit of decorum. Shouldn't you kind of carry yourself as someone we would aspire to behave like, not someone who's probably going to be on Monday Night Raw this week? As an equal and opposite counterpart to Paul Heyman? Would you want Paul Heyman to be president of the United States? Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people who would say yes. But the point is, whether or not there's some scandalous bit of a sex element of this story to exist or not, doesn't fucking matter. I don't care, and you shouldn't care. In fact, Paul Pelosi has been accused of gay rumors here and there for 30 years, but it was in San Francisco, and nobody gives a shit. If you're gay in San Francisco, you might as well literally be a card-carrying NRA member. You're that boring and old news. No one cares, and you shouldn't either. But again, you know what you should care about? The fact somebody who looked like an enthusiast of judo and Shrek without being green and a ponytail and a backpack full of zip ties and a hammer, who spent most of his adult life living in a nudist colony in Berkeley, making hemp bracelets and being very, very pro-LGBT, to the point of, probably being gay himself. Boy, is he passionate. All of that person, somehow, because of the influence of the internet, we all know to be true. We all know, thankfully, according to the Department of Justice 2 years ago, explaining to us very clearly, so all of us could wrap our heads around it. Almost like a shooting that would happen in Las Vegas, and then the security guard who witnessed it would go on Ellen to get the story straight for everybody. Because you know how they like to make sure we're all very much aware of exactly what happened logistically? Because the easiest way to tell us the logistics of what happened in a mass casualty event is to have the security guard go to Ellen. So by that strange bit of coincidence, this guy David DePepe, who lived in Berkeley, literally MK Ultra of the left wing, in a nudist colony making hemp bracelets and being gay in a legal and civil way, suddenly became radicalized because it's the greatest threat facing the internet and everyone here in America interacting with it, even though you can't just fucking close the computer, right? I thought you could still do that. The greatest threat facing America is white nationalism and terrorism. And we keep seeing it because, they told us it was going to happen and they keep, brainwashing people to fucking do it, is my guess. But hey, let's not be conspiracy theorists. Let's talk about what we can prove. What we can prove is the cameras that the Secret Service and Capitol Police use were once again turned off. Why was that? That would be very crucial data that would come in handy as to explaining some of these massive inconsistencies. But the reason I want these inconsistencies explained is not so I can find out finally that a guy we all knew was probably gay, allegedly, I have to say that, for the last 30 years in the capital of Gaytown, California. Ooh, wow, back to the desk. Breaking fucking news, you dork. What you should care about is literally how easy it is for national security to lapse completely and a crazy-looking dumb fuck, Olger Hulk-looking sludge from the Goonies fuck could just walk into the house of the lady who could become president very easily and wait to kill her. That's what I care about, and you should too. And again, another reason why Trump is actually just dumb. As someone who, used to be president, you think that would also be the reason he would be worried. Not because he wanted to catch someone being gay, which is interesting, kind of a pot calling the kettle black situation when you get real handsy with your own daughter. I wouldn't want to catch someone doing anything when I realized that someone who has the job that I used to have was very, very close to having the worst night of their life result in the death inside of their own home because Secret Service, the Capitol Police, all of the cameras, and your dumb fuck husband let in a crazy person with a backpack full of torture toys. That would be my chief concern, especially if I was a former president and talking about trying to be another one again. My God, shit is so fucked, you're making me defend that. What is going on? The data is not of interest to people anymore at all. And I get it's fun to jump around and conspiracy this and that, but truly, here's the God's honest truth. This is going to be hard for a lot of you to hear. You mostly, by and large, are not qualified to do that. You're far too dumb. I'm sorry. We have to have dumb people because that's how we know who smart people are. This is just, it's not a moral thing. It's just, this is the numbers. Mathematically, a lot more you have to be dumb than a lot more you have to be smart. With that being said, if you want to get smarter, you want to make sure you're definitely not one of the dumb ones, a chief way to do that is to arrive at all of your conclusions based on data. And actually, don't prematurely arrive at any conclusions. Because the last thing you want to do is prematurely arrive with your mom. What was that, 7? I mean, goddamn, I'm shitting gold these days. Anyway, so speaking of data, and then we'll wrap it up. This has been kind of a long one, and I don't know why this story has struck me so passionate. It could be just because I spent 30 minutes trying to get the right cadence to sing the Semisonic song in the beginning of the episode, and hopefully I did just that. But to wrap it up, let's talk more Elon. Let's talk more Twitter. Let's talk more Elon's Twitter. Now, Elon is a leader. He has taken it upon himself to carry the mantle of free speech by purchasing Twitter, loosening censorship, moving away from a bias, letting a lot of people back on, moving away from bans entirely, and just generally trying to champion a more moderate approach to what has come to be the town square. Now, Elon, in this instance, is trying to do something for the greater good. Now, the greater good being us, the people, the greater people at large, we have no idea what is good for us usually, and we, in fact, many times want the exact opposite, because democracy is actually a stupid idea. In fact, the people who invented it said that. And that's what that is. But anyway, not to do that again, not to do episode 8 again, huh? See, you gotta know your own catalog. If not, who will? Your mom. Now, the largest swath of the population happens to also be the dumbest and loudest. And they all said in relation to Elon taking over Twitter, this is very dangerous. He sometimes says things and thoughts that I don't like or agree with completely every time. If he takes over Twitter, everyone's finally, who's been waiting very patiently, not doing it, will finally have the okay to fire off as many N-words as they want, like it's Lyndon Johnson in the midterms, baby. We have to stop Elon from taking over Twitter, because if he successfully does, it will be an endless barrage, an onslaught of racial slurs finally being tweeted off by people who have been waiting patiently to do so until Elon took over Twitter, obviously. And once he does, it will be a non-stop stream of tweets containing the words, well, as it turns out, most people aren't complete and utter vile racists. Contrary to the belief of the majority somehow, statistically, I'm still confused. Turns out the data, the objective numerical representations of truth, and this is actually thanks to pro bono work of a security firm named the Network Contagion Research Institute. They took it upon themselves, once Elon successfully and fully took over Twitter, this is a third-party company that took it upon themselves to track every use of a racial slur or anything that fell under a hate speech, a racial epitaph. This company, the Network Contagion Research Institute, tracked a 500% increase in the usage of the N-word. For example, just take the N-word. Now, what they found, that yes, there was a 500% increase in the use of that slur. But what they found was that disproportionately, I'm talking like on a level of like 8 to 1, 9 to 1, all of the Twitter accounts tweeting this racial slur were pretty much, by and large, the same account tweeting the word on multiple instances, i.e., another way to say that would be bots. The uptick, the nominal uptick that everyone seemed to be afraid of Elon Musk buying a company and all of the racists who've been politely waiting to be racist publicly come out of the woodworks, turns out all of the evidence of the racists coming out of the woodworks is actually data suggesting it's bots, not real people doing it. Now, those bots, you could take that objective data and, derive any conclusion you may have from it. You may say that's Russia, which certainly is pretty logical to conclude that, but we don't know. But what we do know, thanks to the independent third-party company that was not asked to do this, they just did it because they want to know. Network Contagion Research Institute took it upon themselves to find out, actually do the math, and thankfully found out there's not that many racists. They're actually bots. It's actually a problem that Elon himself brought up when he first discussed buying Twitter. And Twitter was very dodgy about how many bots are actually active on the platform, weren't they? And thankfully, most people aren't wildly racist. It's just a few people in Russia pretending to be a lot of Americans in Texas. And warfare evolves. What used to be boots on the ground is now people in Russia pretending to be people in Texas on a laptop still arguing about George Zimmerman. What do you mean? He looked like a threat. I did not know he had hood up. This was a dangerous bit to entertain. So that's what I'm saying. War evolves. Used to be boots on the ground. Used to be planes in the sky. Actually, it seems like there's been a lot more planes in the sky. Actually, some bad news is there's actually American soldiers with American feet inside of American boots holding American guns that have just, as I speak to you, touched down in the Ukraine. Not to alarm anybody. So instead, just one more time, I don't know who broke into my home, broke into my home. But we're still all fucked.